thought it was really kind of nice for you guys to hear from somebody who actually sat in these seats.
I'm happy to see so many of you out here taking AP and advanced level science courses, because it is, even if you're not going to be a scientist, such an amazing way to gain really practical skills that are going to help you find careers in the long term. So even though I'm a scientist, I'm not in the lab every day. I'm actually working with a group of folks that are not too much older than yourselves. We hire almost exclusively individuals right out of college who are interested in technology and data and working collaboratively. The reason I work there is because I'm really interested in climate change issues. The things that you see up here on the screen are what keep me up at night. They make me not be able to sleep. They make me worry about the direction that our world is going in. When I started my career as a biologist, I spent a lot of time working in remote places, in rainforests, along the coast, and seeing all the problems that came from climate change. When you're out there in natural environments, you start to see that the impacts are real, that those temperature rises are already having real-world implications. Higher education and some of the big corporations in America, like Google and Apple, are paying attention to climate change issues. Because in higher ed, the students care, so they have to. So what I do with the campuses is take a look at how they are actually operating their facilities. So you look at the cloud up there on the slide, and that's all the various greenhouse gases that can be emitted into the atmosphere through human activity. And on college campuses, they are mostly concerned about the electricity that they're using, because that's a really big impact on the greenhouse gas emissions. They're concerned about the fossil fuels that they're using to heat their facilities, the fuel that they're using for their cars, and the purchases they're making. So the paper, is it recyclable? Does it have recycled content? Are they trying to reduce how much paper? All those factors roll up into what we call a greenhouse gas inventory. When myself and my teams go out, what we're doing with these campuses is giving them advice on how to reduce their impact on the environment. One of the number one things I tell them is knock down some buildings, because typically they have more buildings than they need to actually educate you guys to get your degrees, because they have big donors and people who throw money at building new, more. And what you end up with is some campuses where you barely even interact with anybody, because there's so few people and so many buildings. So most of the campuses we work with, part of the strategy they have is to take some of those down so that they're not heating and cooling as much space, and therefore not releasing as many greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things that your teachers asked me to talk about was how I went from these seats here at Interboro to having a job like that. And it all started here. I went to Glenolden School, came to Interboro, and I think I always had in my mind that I was interested in science, but I didn't know too many scientists. And I was pretty busy with other things, like picking up my husband. But I remember all the time folks asking me, what are you going to do with your life? And then having a couple of teachers that said, you need to figure out what that really looks like, when I said I wanted to be a scientist. I don't remember what course it was, but we had to go and do job shadowing. We had to pick a career we were interested in and go find someone to follow and to learn what that career looked like. And what I'm finding more and more as I go into my own career is that people really want to help. So if you're interested in something, if you're an artist, if you are a scientist, if you have video production goals, whatever it is, just go find a place that looks like it could be a good fit and ask. The majority of the time people are going to say yes, because they just want to help you out. They see a kid who's curious and they're like, yeah, I'll get involved in that. This job has allowed me to really go out and talk to people who have really different viewpoints and try to use the data and the information to be persuasive and to move people in the right direction. How are we looking on time, guys? About 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Okay. And truthfully, I get bored easily. I've been doing this work for 3 years. It's been really cool. I've been doing things that I really enjoy. But next, I have no idea. I could be anywhere. And that brings me to the final thing I want to talk about before we have questions, which is what your careers might look like. This is a really fascinating subject to me, because the folks that we're hiring into our company now are in your generation, Generation Z. And all of you, regardless of what grade you're in, are probably going to questions like, what are you going to be? And people expect you to have an answer to that. What are you going to major in? And people expect you to be so sure. But you're still figuring things out probably. And as we've been studying Generation Z, we've been trying to understand these college students that we're about to hire into our company, what they're actually looking for in their work, and recognizing that you all grew up in a really different way than I grew up. You've always had a phone. You've always had a computer. You've dealt with technology differently. One of the things that really strikes me as we look at the data about these folks that we're thinking about hiring from your generation, Generation Z, is the statistic on the far right there. When they start to analyze how often y'all are going to change jobs, they're thinking that your generation is going to have constant job changes. And I think that's really interesting because there's so many people I know who I work with who are afraid of change and who feel like the first thing they do is what they're going to be doing for the rest of their lives. And I think your generation can go into it knowing that you might have 10 different jobs or 10 different careers over the course of your life. And that can actually be exciting because each one can be a new adventure that teaches you something new, and it can lighten the load on you a little bit. When someone asks that question, what are you going to be, what are you going to major in, you might have an answer, but 5 years from now you could be something completely different than what you started out as. I feel like I've had 12 careers over the course of my life, and all of them have been fulfilling, and all of them have been interesting, but also really different. So if you guys know this going into your careers, you can say, all right, eventually I want to find a dream job, but along the way I'm going to have some jobs that are just something people pay me for. How many of you have one of those jobs now? Scooping ice cream, watching my kids. I started out there with just doing whatever people would pay me to do. And then I figured out what I was good at. And then I figured out what I really, really loved. And sometimes I've had jobs that have accomplished all three. Sometimes I've had to step back and just focus on what I love and accept a pay cut. And sometimes I've been able to come out and say, here's the perfect culmination of all of these things. So when you go out and you start thinking about college, don't feel like you have to lock yourself into one thing for all of eternity. Live within those bubbles and see if you can work your way towards the middle. And I think you'll be all right.
So I figured I might as well start with why I wanted to be a nurse. It's my little nephew who's a uncle and I just forever back I knew I'm super passionate about caring for people. I think this is a funny story, but my parents got me a cat when I was 3 years old, and I said kind of growing up taking care of him, and I knew I wanted to take care of people. I really love the job is fast paced and challenging. I like to be weeks. And I work 3 12-hour shifts a week, 7 p to 7 a. And then I work every third weekend, and I think it's at least 2 holidays per year. So I think I just want to talk about rotating because a lot of my friends just stayed in the one unit, and the benefits of rotating is neonatal is a lot different from normal pediatric intensive care to cardiac care. And I love that I've learned so many different skills, learned how to take care of so many different diagnoses, and now I can take care of a baby just born to 20, we still get 20-year-old child. So I think it just makes me a more well-rounded nurse. And if I decided to go into one, I would be very well prepared. It is a little difficult being a new nurse and rotating to form those bonds that you used to like that you could have, but like being around the same nurses all the time, which is a little difficult, but they're super great. So I'm so glad I did it. So a little bit about our neonatal intensive care. We're a level 4 NICU, so we literally get children from all over the world that come to the NICU. We take care of the sickest kids. It's 98 beds, ginormous. We take care of kids that have holes in their diaphragm that they're doing experimental in utero surgeries on now. We take care of kids that they're born with their intestines outside or in a sac. A lot of kids with lung issues from prematurity. We get like 23-week-old twins that in your hand. It's insane. A lot of like chromosomal abnormalities. A lot of those things come to us. And you see in the news, we get the conjoined twins. So the ones that were disconnected by the head actually help take care of them as a head. Cardiac intensive care is where I'm finishing up right now. They're only about a 20-bed unit, it's a little smaller, and they also have a step-down unit, which is where once kids get better and they move in there. They get a lot of the congenital abnormalities that kids born with things that are hard in the wrong places, on the wrong side. And they also get transplantation. I don't really get the transplantation because you have to like take classes and be specially trained, but assisting